Hey guys, I'm going to show you today how I use two-part epoxy to glue in pen tubes. Some people prefer to use CA glue. I prefer to use two-part epoxy. I did use CA glue for a long time, first couple years of turning, and I still use it only occasionally if I really need to have a pen ready to turn very quickly. But I prefer two-part epoxy because I feel like the bond is a lot stronger. Also, two-part epoxy can be tinted. If you have a pen blank that's kind of translucent, you'd like to further the reverse painting process by tinting the epoxy with paint or something else, you can certainly do that. Now, there's a few kinds of epoxy on the market that are available. The major difference between different kinds of epoxy and the amount of minutes that you see listed on it is not the cure time, but the open time. So it's an approximate amount of time that you have to work with the epoxy before it starts to be more difficult and then impossible to work. So 5-part epoxy you'll find most places, hardware stores, home centers. What I prefer to use is either 15-minute epoxy or 30-minute epoxy. And both of these are from Bob Smith Industries. The 15-minute you can get at Penn State Industries, a common pen turning supplier. The 30-minute epoxy that I'll be using today, they don't carry there, but you can get it on Amazon.com is where I got mine, or probably other places as well. And really the thing to consider with the type of epoxy you use, it's not that one is better or worse than the other with the time, but it's how many pen blanks are you going to glue in one session. Because I tend to like to do 10 to 20 blanks at a time. I do a lot of my pen turning in like stages. So with 5-minute epoxy, really you're only going to get to do a few pen tubes, and you're going to have to pour and mix more epoxy, and it kind of slows the process down. So depending on what you're going to do, I certainly recommend going more towards the longer cure times. And with epoxy, I do generally wait overnight with it. You can do it a few hours later. I've done that before. And if you want to test it to kind of see if it's workable, if you leave the piece of paper or cardboard that you mixed it on, if you leave it out, you can tell when that epoxy is really hardened, then it's probably getting towards the time that's good. But I generally glue up tubes again in batches, and I'll turn the next day or later, but you can do it sooner than that if you want. So keep that in mind with the different epoxy choices as you go through this process. So you want to have something down, obviously, to mix the epoxy on. I have a piece of brown paper bag here. You can use a piece of cardboard or paper or whatever else that you want to use. And the epoxy is, of course, 2 parts. And you want to make a little puddle. And again, depending on how many tubes you're going to glue and how long the epoxy open time is. And you want to take the hardener, and you want to go the same amount with both of these parts of the epoxy. And you can just go by eye. You don't have to be immensely precise, but you want to be about 50-50 with it. I'm using a coffee stir stick that I have broken in half. You can use a popsicle stick. Sometimes I'll also take a Q-tip and I'll break the end off, because that kind of gets a little bit messed up with the cotton if you use it in the epoxy, but you can use that as well. So I'm going to take the coffee stir stick and just mix it up. Together good. And I'm going to take one of my tubes and I'm going to spread the epoxy on about half of it, spinning it all the way around, getting some epoxy on about half the tube. And then I'm going to put it in one side of my pen blank, and then as I'm inserting it in, I'm going to spin it around, back and forth. You want to get a good coverage inside the tube. One of the reasons for failure, whether it's CA or epoxy, would be that the coverage wasn't good. And if you ever have a blank on the lathe that blows up and the wood comes off the tube, look at the tube underneath and see if there is any glue on it. I've not had any, I don't think, failure with epoxy at all but I have had a few with CA in the past. So then I spread it out again on the same half the tube, just reapplied some epoxy, and now I'm flipping the blank over the opposite side from where I first put it in the tube to spread the epoxy the first time. And again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm spinning it as I'm inserting it, and it's gone in from both sides now, so it's going to have really good coverage. Then as I get towards the bottom there, and I want to get epoxy on my hand. You can wear rubber gloves for this. I don't tend to, because I've just kind of gotten used to avoiding getting epoxy on my hands. And then you'll see there you'll have a pretty good amount that'll kind of squeeze out. And so I take whatever I'm working with, the stick or the Q-tip, and wipe around till that's off. And then I'll take the side of the stick and push it down in till it's even. And that's it. It's as simple as that. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions that I didn't cover, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll be glad to get to them as soon as I can. If there's a topic that I haven't covered yet that you'd really like to have me do a video of related to pen turning, you can leave a comment about that as well. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Thanks very much, and have a great day.